Hey everybody, and welcome to Breaking Biotech, another episode of everyone's favorite trading-related podcast. My name is Matt, and thanks a lot for joining me today. We're going to talk about diabetes because I recently got interested in this company called Zafgen, or Zafgen. Zafgen, I'm going to go with. And I'm also going to talk about an update on Tandem Pharmaceuticals because they just got approval for their newest pancreatic insulin pump closed loop system with the Dexcom G6. So that's very exciting for holders of that stock. But I'm going to talk mostly about Zafgen today because I got kind of just interested in them for reasons that they're going to be presenting at the American Diabetes Association conference that's coming up this week, and they stumbled through some tough moments in their company's history regarding deaths from their previous generation of drugs, and I think their new one has actually got some potential, and they actually just released something today regarding an update on their phase 2 data. So we're going to go through that and just going to also give an update on my portfolio and go from there. So these guys are interested in these MET AP2 inhibitors. So these are a group of enzymes that were originally characterized for their usefulness in angiogenesis. So if you inhibited them, they would prevent angiogenesis in cancer, which is very important since tumors need to create their own blood supply. And if you could stop that, then you'd be able to cut off the tumor's source of nutrients. So that was a concept that's been around for a while. And this was a drug target that was interesting for that. But these guys actually found that if you inhibited MET AP2, you would decrease obesity and decrease eating habits in people. So it made sense for them to go ahead and screen for inhibitors that were useful here and use them for treatment in type 2 diabetes and obesity. So they originally, let me just pull up the chart here. Alright, so you can't see it that well. So the company's been around for a while, and they came up with this target for inhibition of MET AP2 called beloranib, and it worked quite well, and they saw good results in phase 1, 2, and they were going through phase 3, and then they started getting these deep vein thrombosis events and pulmonary embolisms, which are life-threatening. And in their trials they did trials in both Prader-Willi syndrome and in type 2 diabetes obesity. And what they found was that patients that took beloranib were more at risk for deep vein thrombosis and pulmonary embolism. So they had a few patients die, and that's what led to a big tumble in their stock in late 2015. So they were at around 40 and dropped down to about 15. And for the last couple of years, they were hanging out around 4 or 5. So that's all due just to deaths in the trial, and they had to shut it down, and the FDA stopped them. So throughout the last couple of years, they've been screening new drugs that were not going to make people prone to deep vein thrombosis. So they kind of figured out the mechanism on how these inhibitors were able to prevent clot degradation and promote clotting, which is very dangerous for people. Especially in the big veins of the leg. So they discovered these new generation, we'll say, of MET AP2 inhibitors known as ZGN1061, and they have another one that they're focusing on for Prader-Willi syndrome. But today I'm going to focus a little bit more on 1061. So they found this new generation of inhibitors, and now since going through phase 1, they focused on clotting as a safety thing that they're going to pay particular attention to, since they obviously didn't when they were doing their original first generation beloranib trials. So there's a huge opportunity here in type 2 diabetes. They talk here in their slides about all the people that are affected. And there's a lot of treatments out there for type 2 diabetes, but even with the current treatment regimen, there's still an unmet need. So drugs like these that are independent of the traditional type insulin sensitizers would be very useful. And I don't think they actually know the mechanism of how this improves insulin sensitivity, but they're doing another trial that's in combination with a GLP-1 type drug, a long-acting GLP-1, which is known to improve insulin secretion in pancreatic islets. So it's they're looking to see whether or not combination of those two treatments is additive. So despite not knowing the actual mechanism, there might be some actual potential here during their trials to see whether it can be additive to current treatments to improve diabetes. So the main readout for them here is hemoglobin A1C, which is a long-term marker of glucose in the blood. And if you have very high glucose, you're going to have higher hemoglobin A1C. And if you improve your sugar, then you can reduce your amount of A1C. So they look at that here in the trial, and they also look at these D dimers, which are an important measure of potential clotting risk factors. Okay, so what they found in their phase 1 trial with this new generation of MET AP2 inhibition is that they saw safety was very good. They saw some weight loss in these patients, even though they weren't necessarily obese. They did 2 types of phase 1 trials, and when they did their phase 2, we've seen interim data that showed a decrease in A1C after 8 and 12 weeks using the drug compared to placebo. So this is pretty encouraging. And the things that you worry about when you're looking at a new generation of drug that's already existed is if it doesn't come with the safety problems, is it still going to be effective? So it seems here that at least in the interim data that it was effective at reducing A1C. And when they also looked at safety, so these D dimers, like I mentioned, they saw that in the high dose group here, the 0.9 milligrams, that it was no different than the placebo in terms of these D dimer levels. So it looks like they're not going to have any problems with deep vein thrombosis. Of course, this is only a phase 2 trial, and a larger phase 3, it's going to be something that they pay attention to. So I think they're going to be more careful here. Okay, so I didn't realize that they were going to actually announce results like today. So when I was looking at their website this morning, they announced actually that they got positive data on their phase 2 proof of concept with this. So they got all their primary objectives met in the 0.9 milligram dose of Zafgen 1061. So they saw that they got a significant decrease in A1C at both 8 and 12 weeks. They saw no serious adverse events, which is super important because, if they repeat the past, it's going to be devastating to their company. So that's all really good. And they also are talking about an effect in NASH. So I've been interested in NASH for a little while, and I talked a lot about what's the company's name? I'm forgetting. Oh, Madrigal. So I talked a lot about Madrigal Pharmaceuticals and how I think their drug holds a lot of potential for the future. But these guys here are just doing another study to look at NASH, and they showed that this combination therapy of Zafgen 1061 and liraglutide, which is a long-acting GLP-1 agonist, that had an improvement in NASH. So that's kind of cute. It's nice to see that. Obviously, just to see that there's no serious adverse events and that they were able to lower A1C is most important for me. So this is great to see. I think I'm going to be curious to actually look at the poster that they're presenting, and we'll be able to see that. So this is the info on the poster session for the ADA scientific session this week in Orlando. So they have a few posters, which will be interesting to see, or at least to see the abstract. So I bought in. Oh yeah, so this is the deaths that I already talked about. So I posted a tweet on Twitter earlier in the week that I was taking a position after I noticed that they were going to present some news this week, and then I doubled down yesterday when they had a bit of a dip in the stock. So my position is $7. I bought 100 shares, and I think they're probably going to pop a little bit on the news that was released today, but it'll be nice to see their actual data on the poster and see what other things they looked at regarding diabetes and their drugs. So this is an idea that I think these guys hold potential for, and we'll see. So the amount of cash they have right now is it's enough to get them through the next year or so. Where is it? So I think they have around $90 million in cash at the end of Q1 of this year. So that's nice to see. I think this data that they're going to show that's positive. They're going to have to do another round of funding, or hopefully sell the drug or something in order to continue operations for up to 2020. So we'll see what they do from that. But I think it's nice to see the positivity of this phase 2 data, and we'll see whether or not they want to try again the phase 3 or hand it off to somebody else. All right, so I wanted to also mention the Tandem Diabetes Care news that came out this week. So I talked about Tandem 2 weeks ago, I think, and I mentioned that I wasn't sure about taking a position at around $13, which is obviously misguided given that the stock is now trading at around 23. So 2 days ago, it was announced that the FDA approved their t:slim X2 insulin pump with basal IQ technology. So this is pretty huge because this sets them apart from the competition. So one of the things that I mentioned was that their competitors had relatively comparable products before this approval, and that if they were able to integrate the Dexcom G6 technology to their new thing, it would be a huge leap forward because the calibration requires no finger sticks, which is super helpful for people who don't want to do it, and nobody wants to finger prick themselves to calibrate their continuous glucose monitor. So this is really huge for them. I think it's going to set them apart from the competition, and it's going to definitely take a huge amount of market share away from Medtronic, which is a big competitor for Tandem. So the other thing that's pretty cool is that the update is going to be available to people who already have a device. They don't have to buy a new device necessarily. So this is going to be also helpful to people and draw customers in, because I know a lot of the other companies that are out there, they force you to buy an entirely new device every time there's an update, which is pretty annoying, as you can imagine. But these guys are relatively consumer friendly with that. So so they're at $23 right now, Tandem, and I haven't taken a position. I'm kind of tapped out with free cash. The position I took in Zafgen, I sold some Fate Therapeutics. So we'll talk about my portfolio now before we wrap up. But Fate was looking at around $13, and I sold some of them in order to fund my Zafgen purchase here. And I didn't sell Fate for any particular reason. I had a decent amount in them already, and I noticed that they were doing pretty well. So I lowered my position by about 70 shares, and I bought the Zafgen. But I think Tandem at this point is worth jumping into. We'll see what goes on. I don't have any plans to buy any soon, but it looks like they're going to be able to be a big player in the space now. So just an overall look at the portfolio here. Madrigal's still doing pretty good, hanging around 300 with those buyout rumors. I saw on some of my Twitter feed that some some option sweeps were looking at option activity for Madrigal in hopes that they're going to actually get bought out before the end of the year. So we'll see how that goes. I haven't sold or bought anything there. These three are killing me right now. Aimune, I don't know why they're down so much, and Adamus, there's no news going on, but they're down. So I don't know. I'm just holding strong. I still see a lot of potential with them, and Gilead as well. Illumina doing well, Fate doing well, Spark doing well. So the gene therapy companies are really killing it, and I think it's going to be really interesting how that technology pans out. I've been reading more about Bluebird, and I'm probably going to do a video on them if I don't get distracted like I was this week with some diabetes stuff. But the gene therapy in isolated cells holds a ton of potential. And, I'm not the first one to say this, and it's been around for a little bit, the technology already, but I think the more this space develops, it's going to be pretty good. So Fate is unique in this space because they're trying to do their own iPSC platform. So they want to make more of an off-the-shelf product, whereas Bluebird, you actually have to take the patient's own cells in order to do the gene therapy on them and then give them back to the patient. Fate is super unique in that they're trying to do induced pluripotent cells from one donor they're expanding these cells and doing the gene modifications to them and then throwing them into any sort of patient. So they have a bit of an advantage there, even though Bluebird is obviously way more, is further along in their clinical trials with the specific diseases they looked at. So I'm probably going to do something on Bluebird soon, suffice to say. But Spark is also in the gene therapy space. And yeah, so also my Bristol Myers Squibb position and Zafgen. We'll see what goes on. So overall, I'm a little bit ahead of XBI. S&P is still sort of chugging along, but nothing exciting to talk about there. Volatility is supposed to increase a little bit this week, so I'll keep an eye on that, but it's not a significant amount. Yeah. So with that, I'm going to wrap there. Thanks a lot, guys, for watching. Let me know what you think, if you're going to take a position on any of the companies. And yeah, I was definitely wrong about Tandem, but I think Zafgen's definitely got some potential. And with that, thanks a lot for watching. Please like, subscribe, let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you guys next time.